Everyone, and welcome to a Unity Basics video. In this video, we are going to take a deep dive into Rigidbody2D. Rigidbody2D is a component that determines what physics forces can act upon a game object. So there are different types of body types which determines which forces will act. For example, there is dynamic, which if a body is set to dynamic, both gravity and external forces can act on it. If it's set to kinematic, the body will be impacted by select forces. That is to say, if something is dynamic and it collides with a kinematic object, it will affect it. However, if two kinematic forces collide with each other, there will be no effect. And similarly, there will be no effect of gravity. Finally, there is a static. A static object will not be affected by anything. All right, so we'll be using input dot get down, get key down, key code dot whatever dsk to see how these forces act upon an object. So let's head over to Unity, and we are going to create square that we'll be using later on to demonstrate these body types. Let's go ahead and create C script, and we are going to call it change body type. All right, let's give it a second to load, and then we will attach it with the square. All right, so let's go here, add this component, and let's open this. All right, so the first thing I'm going to need is rigid body 2D, and I'm going to call it RB. Let's instantiate this rigid body at the start by saying RB is equal to get component, and we will get rigid body 2D. Next, what I want to do is check what, so if we press S, we will make the object static. If we press D, dynamic, and if K, kinematic. So I'm going to check what button has been pressed. So if get key down dot, I think it's braces, key code dot D, then make RB dot body type as rigid body type 2D dot dynamic. If we get key down key code dot C, then we are going to make RB dot body type as rigid body type 2D dot, what was D? Oh, sorry, not C, rather K. I'll make it dot kinematic. If get key down key code is S, then we get RB dot body type equals rigid body type 2D dot static. So let's see if that worked. Let's head over to Unity. Does it compile? Get key down does not exist in the current context. I need input dot get key down. Okay, yeah, I need input everywhere, of course. Similar to input.get mouse down, but only in context of keyboard. Alright, so let's click play. And it's just sitting there doing nothing. I don't have a rigid body here, so it may not work. Let's just give it a try. Let's make it dynamic. Nothing happened. Yep, I will have to add a rigid body. So let's go ahead and add a rigid body to this. All right, let's click play, and let's see what happens. It fell down because initially in this case it was simulated and it was dynamic. Let's make it static to start with so that we can play around with these values. So we have got static. So this is static. The object just stays there. Nothing happens to it. Let's make it dynamic. Press D and it falls down. Let's bring it back. Let me explain that again once. So right now this is static. Nothing is working on it. If I press D and then switch to S quickly, the gravity will start acting on it and then stop. So I'm going to do that now, pressing D, and S. So as long as D was pressed, it was falling. As soon as I press S, it became static. No forces were acting on it. Let's press K, although I don't think anything will happen, but let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so you can see that the body type changed to kinematic. So let's try to do something quickly. Let's see if we can have another force act on this. So that we can view what happens when a body type is kinematic. So let's change it to kinematic by default. If I click play, it will just hover there and nothing will happen. Now to illustrate the concept of kinematic, I will duplicate this, move it rather to the top and have it fall on top of this by changing it to dynamic. Let's see what happens. The square falls right through it. Okay, that's because we don't have a collider. So let's try adding collider, box collider 2D, and here too let's add a box collider 2D. Now these should be able to interact. Let's see what happens. The bottom one is kinematic, top one is static, both interacted with each other. And the square one is static, the bottom one is kinematic. So they were able to interact with each other because they had Rigidbody 2D. So that's it for this video, and see you in the next one.